work hard, go to school, like get good grades, like you put the work in, you're going to get rewarded accordingly. And that's just not even remotely how publishing works.
You're listening to Writer Unblocked, the podcast for serious authors who are ready to scale their careers with smart strategy. I'm Nicole, your host, and I help authors navigate publishing, marketing, and multi-format expansion, all while keeping the vibe high. Today on Writer Unblocked, I am chatting with Nic DiDomizio, and he is pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to make it in the traditional publishing world, from query letter heartbreak to near deals that died in acquisitions, and the unexpected role James Patterson played in his debut. As always, additional information is available in the show notes, or you can visit writerunblockedpodcast.com. All right, let's get into it. Nic, I have to tell you, I read Nearly Wed in a day and a half.
Oh my God, that's why I wore this shirt, because I saw that you were reading that one. So.
The Lobster. Okay, you got me with this book.
I'm so happy.
We need to talk about the book, and then we'll do this interview backwards. We're going to talk about Nearly Wed, and then we'll be like, and you are Nic, and this is your background, and you can walk me through your author journey, which is very impressive.
Love it.
Is this your first book, Nearly Wed?
No. It's my latest.
Right.
So also we're going backwards. I like it. I like this trajectory.
Okay, so we're going to start with your last book, Nearly Wed. I love this book. I wasn't sure what I was going to think of it. I was like, oh, okay, I read the premise. I'm like, okay, let me tell you my favorite things about this book. The pop culture references were strong. For my age group, for my geriatric millennial.
Oh, yeah.
Heart.
We're both in the, yeah.
You know what it is? I live in a world and I work with a lot of older authors, and there's a lot of references in my work life that I don't get. Right? So in my personal life, my children are referencing things that I have no idea what I go on TMZ and I don't even know who these supposed musicians and celebrities are.
Oh, yeah.
And then at work, I work with older authors who have a lot of, especially music references. And I'm like, I don't know who that is. I don't know who you're talking about. Right. This book made me feel so seen and smart. And like, I knew every reference. I knew what you were talking about, number one. Number two, I am in a I guess age gap marriage. So I love that Kip and Ray were so different and from a different generation.
Right. You're like the perfect reader for this particular
I am the audience
story.
For Nearly Wed. I am a sucker for things like an early moon. And for those listening, the concept in the book is the couple goes on an early moon, which you're supposed to take before you get married. And I will take any excuse for an early vacation. But also the concept that you would find something critical about your relationship during an early moon that could make or break the next step.
Yeah.
So tell me about, I need to know how you came up with the story. I need to know the inspiration. I need to know how long it took you to write it. I need to know everything about the background of this book now that I'm a huge fan.
I am happy to talk about everything about the background because this is like, it's weird. It's a book that like kind of came out of a discussion with my editor when we were working on the book before this, which was called The Gay Best Friend. And it was also like a wedding comedy, but it was about the friend of the couple that was getting married. And so when that book was like going through the process of getting the cover and all the marketing stuff, we still hadn't settled on a title. So we were brainstorming titles, and my editor actually suggested Nearly Wed as a title. And
for the Gay Best Friend book.
Yeah, for the other book. And loved it. But I was like, it's not as representative of what that book actually was, because the main character was not nearly wed. But the title stuck with me. So when it came time to do the next one, I had that title in the back of my mind, and I was like, well, if I were to write like a main character who was getting married, how would I approach that? And of course, I looked to some of my own experiences for inspiration. And I've been with my partner for almost 11 years, and he's 9 years older than me.
We
So,
have
or
so many similarities.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So, or he's really, right now he's 9 years older than me, but for the other half of the year, he's 10 years older than me. It's one of those things. So he's completely Gen X, and I'm like the most millennial in the world. So I was like thinking about how, our differences and some of the bumps we had earlier in our relationship, like after a few years, like we figured each other out, and we just mesh really well. But of course, with like so many, and not just the age gap, but like he works in finance, I'm very creative. He's extremely private. Like he's not posting. He doesn't like, he like has, some social media, but he doesn't post. He'll just kind of go there to like look at political news and, just the opposite of me. Like so already I had two characters kind of in my head. Like not completely based on us, but I was really interested in the like lobster situation because I'm from Connecticut, and when I was growing up, it was like Connecticut lobster was, it sounds so random for anyone who hasn't read the book,
Connecticut lobster.
but Connecticut lobster was like a whole thing. Like we would, every summer, like my grandparents had a house on the beach, and like it was just, even like my and my like step grandfather would had like a lobster boat, and he would go lobstering, and it was just like a part of Connecticut culture. And then over the past like 20 to 30 years, like the lobsters have just left. Like they have all migrated more north to where the water's colder, because it's like the Connecticut shoreline is, getting too warm. So the lobstering industry in the past like 30 years has just like diminished from like a boom, like $1 billion industry in Connecticut to like there's like a small handful of people who are still doing it. So
I love that. But I see, when I think about writing a book, and I'm not an author, it's so hard for me to think about the world building.
right.
And so when I was reading it and I got to the part about the it was kind of woven throughout, but it was like, there was that background of like what was going on in the lobster industry, because it's related to his sister,
right.
and the family business. And also then he has like this great lobster comeback during the dinner with the other couple. And so I always admire that in a good writer, the ability to weave, like, it's not just what's going on with these two characters. There's a whole actual world.
Right. Like there was a period, and this is why I'm also like grateful for good editors, because there was a brief period during the drafting of the book where I went to my editor and I like gave some chapters that were very lobster heavy. And I was like, what if we like I know like we love the title Nearlywed, but what if we change it to like Love and Lobsters or something, and we make it the whole book about the lobster crisis in Connecticut? And she was just like, I don't think readers are going to care about that as much as like the main conflict between the couple. And
thank God for your editor, because I agree.
Like I was obsessed. And I think that's like, if there's one piece of advice for writers that I think is really good, is when you get into like little obsessions, to like just write about those, because it, at the very least, like, you maybe don't want to write your entire book about the lobster crisis or like whatever the obsession is, but it gets you like flowing. And like once I had that world to work in, like I was really excited to like come to the manuscript every day and be like, well, because I was just thinking about like all of the like the lobstering families and stuff in Connecticut, and just how does that like ripple like to every other part of life too. And so like Ray, the main character, like, his grandfather was a Connecticut lobsterman. His father did it. Now his sister she's one of the last remaining, but the father, they retired, they moved to Florida. And the sister's like trying to hold on to this version of her life and herself that is just not feasible anymore, but she's really attached. And I think a lot of us can be that way with a lot of things in our lives. And even Ray, like he left Connecticut, but he loves this idea that his sister's always going to be there. She's always going to be lobstering. She's living in
The
the
family
house.
house is still there. Yep.
Yeah. So it was a great way to like explore that part of like getting older. But yeah, I think I'm grateful that my editor steered me away from going full
Love and Lobster.
full
No,
lobster.
Nearly Wed is such a good title for this story. I have to also ask, I'm just so curious about this whole process. When you say, I'm going to sit down and write this book, and these are the characters in my head, how do you come up with like all of Ray's family and backstory, and then Kip's family and backstory? Like, do you start writing and it comes, or do you kind of outline or figure that out early on and then start writing?
That is such a good question. I think for me, it's different from book to book for sure. But I would say the one constant thing is that I don't do like a full outline going into something, but I will sketch out just like a basic kind of arc, and I need to have like the first, like the starting point is what I'm the most aware of, like the first scene. Um, and then some idea of what their issue is and what needs to, like what they need to overcome and all of that. But in terms of like the details and the backstory, all of that like richness of like the character psyche and all that stuff, I only really know like a high level at first. But then as I like start writing, a big part of my process too is I run every day, and I like go golfing during the summer and stuff. And when I'm doing activities like that, that's where the whole thing is like floating in my head.
You did such a beautiful job of creating depth.
So it's actually funny you say that, because I will say the first draft for me is never that good. So it like all comes to me. I put it all in, and then I have this big thing. And there's actually a quote from I forgot who it was on. It was a master class that I was watching once, and he was saying, actually, I remember who it was, but I think he's like problematic, so I'm not going to give him a shout out. But he's the best-selling author, and he said like the point of the second draft and all the drafts that come after the first draft is to make it look like you did everything on purpose. And so that's where like I was able to like take everything that I had thought of during that initial creation and organize it in a way that felt like these were real people, and that they've always kind of been this way and came from these families. And because yeah, I mean, my favorite part of writing is always going to be like, as much as I love a good plot and a good twist and drama, and like reality TV is also a very huge inspiration. Like I the messier the better, but my favorite part is really getting into the head of the character and seeing like why do people have like the patterns that they do, and like the hangups and the tendencies and like the just like making decisions, and figuring out why they would do stuff. Why do we do what we do?
Why do we do it? No, I it's brilliant. And I like what you said about the draft, because so many authors write the first draft and then despair. Instead of seeing it like you're describing, which is such a valuable, like it should be a celebration of like, yay, I finished my first draft. It is supposed to be bad, or it is supposed to have flaws. Like this is now where my foundation gets laid.
Yeah, it takes a while, I think, to get to that point, because I used to be such a perfectionist, like during the initial writing process, and I couldn't move on to the next chapter until I felt like the last chapter was perfect. And several books deep, I realized like that's such a waste of time, because you're, no matter what, even if you think you have written the perfect draft, like if the goal is to get it published traditionally, there's no agent or editor who's going to look at the draft that you send them. I mean, it probably happens like 1% of the time, but I have like a ton of author friends, and this has never happened to anybody, like where they say, oh, this is great, no notes, let's go right into production and publish it. Like there's always going to be more drafts that you have to do. So it's good to let go of perfectionism in that early stage and just view it more as I'm creating a giant ball of something of like stone, and then I'll chisel it out later and turn it into like the sculpture.
That is a good analogy. And so talk to me about how having an editor, I mean, aside from clearly steering you away from Love and Lobsters, how having an editor is just such a valuable part of your author journey.
So yeah, I would say, well, when I first started writing like forever ago, I had two critique partners who I like worked with on my first book, and we would send each other drafts back and forth. And so it wasn't like having an editor, but just having other eyes on the work has always been, it was hard for me at first because like I said, I was such a perfectionist, and it can be hard to send something that you spent a lot of time on and put a lot of thought into, and then like get a response back that is picking it apart. But it's just so crucial if the goal is to publish, because I mean, the idea is that the work, while it is like for you in the sense of you have to enjoy creating it and you have to like, whatever, but it's really for the person who's reading it. And so you want to know how it's going to be perceived by different people. And so by the time, 8 books later, when I started getting published and working with like professional editors at, the publishing houses, that like, and the editors that I've had have been so good at being like not just an extra set of eyes, but being like a set of eyes that is thinking about the book reading public overall. And so they come at it from a view of, all right, well, like there's customers walking into a bookstore and they're going to pick this up and they're going to expect certain things. And like, you don't want to just give people what they expect, but you have to, meet a certain level of expectation that, stuff is going to happen at least. And that like things are going to make sense, and that, you're not just rambling about nonsense. So they're really good at just making sure that, you're meeting the mark in terms of commercial, like publication ready work. And then just giving you different perspectives. I mean, writing is so like such a bubble. It's like, I almost like, you can't 100% trust yourself when you're in the middle of it. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I'll get swept away into my work and I've had first drafts where I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And that's so dangerous because you're very much like in this honeymoon phase of just like, you created it. So of course you're going to think it's great. And then I've had first drafts where I was like, this is such crap. And then like, it's actually like, you just need someone to tell you objectively. And of course, publishing is subjective, but you need an outside view to just like actually tell you like what it is that you just wrote. Even though you should know, but I don't know, something happens in the process where you don't really have perspective until a lot of time has passed. And if you don't have like a year to wait and look back on the manuscript with fresh eyes, like an editor can fast track that for you by being the fresh eyes. That was long-winded. I'm sorry.
No, I think that's
but,
no. That's a great answer. I think that many authors need to hear that. I work with authors who get super attached to their first book. Like, was your first book ever that you wrote the one that got published?
Not even remotely. And I'm glad now. But at the time, this was like 14 years ago now. But at the time, I thought it was so good. And I tried so hard to get an agent and, all this, everything. And the feedback in the query trenches was like the opposite of what I felt. Like in my mind, I was like, oh, an agent should see this and say, immediately, we'll take it to every publisher in the land and it'll be great. So it was like a reality check, that time. It Yeah, it's like you don't have the perspective until you do. And like I think over time, like now that I've written so many books and I've been in the industry for so long, like I'm better at finishing a project and having an idea of what it is and where it could potentially fit and what about it is commercial and hits the right notes and what about it is a little offbeat and subversive. And I can be more intentional about like what I'm doing, but it for me it took a long time to be able to even have a little bit of um objective like editorial like prowess about my own work because it's just so, it's personal to the writer. So
Very personal. It is.
yeah.
It is an emotional roller coaster. Very personal. Did you always know that you wanted to be a traditionally published author or an author? Period. Like, talk to me about that journey. Like, from knowing you wanted to be an author to the concept of like my definition of success is to be a traditionally published author, and like how that went for you.
um I did not really always. I mean, it was a long winding journey. I'll try to give just some highlights. So I did when I was like really young, like a lot of kids, I read voraciously, but like kids books. Like Goosebumps was like my thing. I then started writing like my own Goosebumps books that, at like 8 years old, I was like, this, how do we get this published? And it was like literally just a stack of like notebook paper about, creatures that
I
would like
have to tell
attack you.
you, I have to tell you that Piano Lessons Can Be Murder was my first and favorite Goosebumps
Oh,
book. So much respect
really?
you were like writing what
That's
Goosebumps
so
fan
funny.
fiction basically. I think every child required reading should be Goosebumps, by the way.
As a kid, Night of the Living Dummy was my fave.
Oh, I
Um,
remember that one. I remember that one.
with the slappy or whatever. So I would write that kind of stuff. Then I got into like David Sedaris and Augustin Burroughs and like some of the more like memoir-y stuff. And so that was like what I wrote. Like the first book I wrote right after college was a memoir, which is kind of ridiculous being, that young. But I was super into it and I like, yeah, spent a lot of time trying to make that happen. And when I was writing that, I did very much think like I want this to be published and I want to be the next David Sedaris was basically like the vision that I had in my head. And so that didn't work out. That one, I queried that for 4 or 5 years. I revised it like a gajillion times because I did have agents like along the way who like really saw potential in like the writing itself, but they didn't see like the book itself being marketable as a nonfiction book from someone who had no platform, which is something you will hear all the time if you're pursuing nonfiction. Like publishers, especially now, I think when I was querying back in 2011, 2012, it was a big deal then, but I think now it's even more. Like publishers want nonfiction authors who are just like ready to go. And so, yeah, it took me forever to let go of that book. I mean, I was so committed to trying to get that book published that I literally, so after grad school, I started working at MTV just in like a business affairs, music licensing type of role because I went to school for music business. Because I was also like a songwriter in undergrad, and that was like the first kind of writing that I pursued. But after living in Nashville for a bit, I realized I wasn't cut out for that journey. So anyway, so I'm working, full-time music licensing, querying the book. After so many comments about my platform not being good enough, I decided to quit that job and take a job at a startup website to be a full-time staff writer. And they had articles that were going viral all the time. So I was like, all right, well, if I'm a staff writer, I'm going to be writing like 3 articles a day. If I go viral enough, certainly someone will want to publish my book. So I did that.
That was your thinking in terms of like, that's how I'm going to get my platform as an author.
Exactly. And with no interest in journalism at all. I only wanted to write comedy. Like there was no, it was, in retrospect, I just had no idea what I was doing. But I did it. And I built out a new section for them. It was like, I weirdly am proud of a lot of the stuff that I wrote there, because it was so like, against what they were going for. Like it was very neat. Like I was able to get a lot of stuff that was very me published, despite like the brand, like that site having such a voice of its own. But in the end, that ultimately got me and my editor and the other staff writers in my section fired, because it was so not on brand for them. So it was kind of a failed venture. But after that happened, that was when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to write the second book. And so the second book, and I specifically switched, that was when I switched to fiction, because I was like, I don't want to hear this like platform bullshit anymore. Like it's not happening. I'm not going viral. I'm not getting like a gajillion followers. It's just not something that I'm even interested in trying to do. Like it takes a whole other thing to be, you know, a social media personality. So I switched to fiction. That book I worked on while I was unemployed for like 4 months. And because I had nothing else to do, it came together really quickly. So it was done. But I queried it, got like a couple rejections initially. Then I just kind of gave up on it weirdly. I think I was so jilted from the first book. And so then I went back to work. That was when we met at first, when I worked for Audible.
Right.
And so I kind of like dove back into the workforce, worked for like a year, and didn't write anything for a year. And then I kind of the following year decided, oh, I forgot that I had this book that I wrote that I never queried, after like 2 rejections. So then I queried it for real. And then I got an agent, my first agent, and she went and put that book on submission. We went to acquisitions with a few editors, but it got shot down for various reasons. After about a year, we gave up on that book. And then I went into writing a third book with the idea that like, I hate this, the way this industry works. Like you're constantly chasing editors' approval, and like not just the editors, but like the acquisitions board, because I had won over like so many editors, but then they couldn't get the buy-in from the other departments. And I was just like, this is so stupid. But I had one more idea at the time that I was like, I need to write. And so and at this point I was full on working at Condé Nast, like in a very demanding role. But I was like, I need to just get this book out. So I started waking up at 4 a.m. to just write as much as I could before the workday. And then I would write at night. And I just like sacrificed my social life, like weekends, because in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to do this for a short period, have this one final manuscript. And then if this doesn't do anything, I'm going to let go and just accept that it's not my destiny. So anyway, so I did that. And then that book ended up selling. That ended up being the one that my agent took out. And like 2 days later, we had an editor reply that he was like so excited about it. He couldn't wait to share it with his team. So that ball started rolling. Still had so many challenges getting it past the acquisitions board and like the sales team, and because it was a book that didn't really fit neatly in a category. So they did shoot it down at acquisitions at first, but then the editor was so like passionate about it that he kept trying like internally, and then he was able to get James Patterson to read it randomly, like the, you know, biggest author of all time. And James loved it, offered to like blurb it. then we got the deal. And so then I was like, okay, I'm not going to give up, because I was like, I just need one sign that like this is for
I was gonna
me.
say, if you
And
need one sign to keep going, and James Patterson reads your book and is like, I'm gonna blurb this. This is great. I think that's
yeah,
your sign.
exactly. So that like finally gave me the permission to like, okay, I can keep trying. So yeah, so it took 3 books before I got published, and then the pandemic happened, which was insane. But right around that same time, like I had gotten a movie deal for that first book, so I had like income coming in for the first time, like from writing.
That must have been exciting.
Yeah, it was a dream. The movie, after years of development and everything, it didn't end up getting made, um, but it was exciting, and it was validating, just again because I was like so thirsty for signs at that stage that like I should be doing this. So that quit my job during the pandemic, like focused on writing full time. And yeah, so since then, now that I think about it, it's only been 5 years since that all happened, and I've written like 6 more books like within that time, just because I had so much time as a full time. And so, and of those 6, 2 of them have gotten published. And the other ones have died on submission, but like I still hold out hope for them somewhere. But I got to a point where I am able to understand how the industry works, and when a book doesn't do what I think it should do, it still hurts, and like I still need to have like go through the feels and like get drunk and all this stuff, but I'm able to bounce back much more quickly and write the next thing, because at the end of the day, that's what like that's the joy of this entire career, is when you're actually creating. Because having had even not as nearly as much success as other authors, but just having had some success, and going to airports and seeing my book on the shelf, and all of those types of superficial markers of success, they feel great, but they're not, I mean, they feel great for like 2 seconds. Like the actual act of creating the book is what consistently feels great. Like that's the thing where you wake up in the morning and you like look forward to doing it. So
that sounds right to me. Wait, so the first one, okay, so the first book to be published was The Gay Best Friend.
No, so that was called Burn It All Down.
Burn It All Down. Sorry, that's the James Patterson. That one has James Patterson on the cover.
Yeah.
The blurb, the quote. Sorry. Burn It All Down came out first. So that was your first published baby.
Yep.
And then it was The Gay Best Friend.
Yeah. So there was a 2-year gap between them getting published. Because
who published the first one?
That was Little Brown.
Little Brown. Okay.
And the sad thing about that experience was that like 6 months before publication, my editor was laid off, and he, like I said before, was so passionate about that book. Like I had never knew that like someone in the industry could care that much about a book. So when he was laid off, my agent did kind of warn me, like, this is not a great sign for the book, because he has been such a huge champion up to this point. Now that he's gone, you're going to get put with someone else. And I got like a new editor, but she, to be frank, like did not give a shit about the book. Like she was not, she didn't know or care about me. Like she was just there doing her job. And then I just became like a thing that she had to deal with. So it was hard. And even at the time when that was happening, leading up to the release date, like I could tell it was happening, but it was also like I was on the precipice of this lifelong dream coming true. So I was very much in denial. Like I didn't want to believe that the publisher I had signed with was just slowly kind of de-investing in my book. But so that was there was definitely heartbreak in that whole period. So I had written, and this was all while I was writing The Gay Best Friend, or what later became to be called The Gay Best Friend. So my agent sent that book to Little Brown, but my editor, who was my champion, was gone, so she had to send
Right.
it to this replacement person. And she didn't even read it. She just said, like, sorry, we're not interested. You know, feel free to go find another publisher. So that was like a shitty kind of first experience. But you know, we went back out on submission and ultimately landed at Sourcebooks with a 2-book deal. And that's where I still am today. And I have my next book with them is coming out next May. So there's a happy ending, and I do think, you know, it's all about the editor. I think any publisher can be the dream publisher for an author if they have the right editor, and any publisher can be the nightmare publisher for an author if they don't have the right editor. So it's, yeah, no pressure to anybody who's out there on submission, but it's
Well, I think what you're describing is important, that it's not a one and done process. That like you have to go through this process of like, if you're going to pursue the traditional route, you have to go through this process of like the agent, then being on submission. You could die on submission, meaning you got an agent who's shopping it, but no one's buying it. That's die on submission. You do get it, but then, like you said, something happens with your editor at the publishing house, or the publishing house is like, we're going to do one book and we're not interested in your second book. Like you have to grow such a thick skin.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not like I wrote a book, it gets picked up and everything is great after that. It's a constant, every book almost puts you through that process, unless you're locked in like a 2 or 3 book deal and like you know you're good. But
yeah, I mean, I would say there's a very small percentage of authors who do have that dream scenario. Like I do have some author friends who, you know, signed with their first publisher, big auction, like massive advance, and the editor stays. And so there's like so much investment into their career right off the bat that, you know, they're just set up for success in a way that most authors are not, unless the book like sells bananas crazy, you know.
And I also think what you're describing is not just being a good writer, it's also just timing, and I hate to say luck, but it's like the convergence of these things happening all at once, of the right editor working at the right place. Like,
oh, it's totally, I mean, I literally gave, I think I was telling you before we started, when I led a workshop for another podcast, The Shit No One Tells You About Writing. And the main thing that and like, maybe I shouldn't have been so brutal, but the whole theme of the speech was about how pursuing a career in writing is very similar to like being a professional gambler, where you can do it, what you can control certain strategies. Like if you know how the game of blackjack is played, like you can know when to hit, when to double down, when to split, when to surrender, and all of that. But at the end of the day, like it all comes down to what cards you're dealt. And you just can't control that part of it. And like you said, the editor has to be there at the right time, at the right place, with the right like opening in the right publication season, with the right budget at the right time in the year, depending on like how much budget is left. Just so many things. And
so many things have to line up for it to be. And it has nothing to do with your writing ability. That's why I want people to also hear, like, it's.
Oh, totally. It's institutionalized gambling is really what like traditional publishing is. And like, which is like depressing in a way, but especially for our generation too. I think it was always drilled into us: work hard, go to school, like get good grades, like you put the work in, you're going to get rewarded accordingly. And that's just not even remotely how publishing works.
No.
It's, you know, like people who don't deserve it will get mega bestsellers and be set for life with like a career that seems to just happen, and people who deserve it the most could never be published at all. So yeah, it's a rough biz, but but you know, the one tool that you really always have is persistence is always going to be the thing that that you can access, that you can control, which is just writing more and putting more out, and you know, getting the next lottery ticket, which in this case happens to be like a manuscript that takes months or years of your life and dedication, but the ticket is available if if you want to put the work in for it.
I have a question about when you were not working with an agent yet, you were looking for an agent. The the draft that you wrote, did you have that professionally looked at or edited in any way before you started looking for an agent?
I did not, but um I did work with those two critique partners who,
Right.
and I was lucky because like one of my critique partners is a an English professor, and he's like the best critique. Like he would make an amazing editor. Um,
So it's
he's
kind of like you did have an editor, sort of.
so yeah, I basically did, and I was lucky too because when I was querying, I think that was a period of time in the industry where agents took more time to offer feedback, because I had calls with agents. They would send me like long editorial notes about the book where like with specific things for me to work on. So I got a lot of free training just from querying. Um from what I
Which may not
hear,
necessarily be the case nowadays, but that's really nice to hear.
yeah, I've heard like nowadays it's much more like agents will just ghost, or they'll give like a form rejection or whatever, because I think it's impossible for them to like have that level of attention for every like non-client. um
Right.
so yeah, I did get a lot of feedback for sure along the way, which helped.
No, that's great. So have you thought of what are you gonna do with those manuscripts that didn't get published? There's no
That's
self-publishing path for you in your future?
I honestly, like, I know some people who have made huge careers self-publishing, and so it does seem like one of my dearest author friends, Lucy Score, is like, she's currently on the New York Times list. Like, she's killing it, and she started self-publishing. Megan Quinn is another one who I love. We went on book tour together last year, and she started by self-publishing. So it's tempting for me to like, and maybe I will at some point if they don't find a home traditionally, because I have a new agent now and she's shopping um that material, so fingers crossed. I'm literally like an author on submission right now. But yeah, I think my thing with self-publishing is that I've always like, it kind of goes back to the whole platform issue. When I was trying to do nonfiction, I'm just, for some reason, I'm not good at marketing myself, self promotion. Building a brand publicly is just so, and maybe it's like I need therapy, and then I'll be able to overcome whatever it is that blocks me from being able to do that. But that's kind of why I feel like if I were to self-publish, I could easily see those books just kind of being sent into the void on Amazon and like nothing happens. And so that's kind of my fear, because at least with, like, for me, the benefit of traditional publishing has always been like, they give you a huge chunk of, or depending on the publisher, but they give you a chunk of money up front, and then they do all the work. So like they get it into bookstores, like they design the cover, they do just everything, all the like the stuff that I would suck at doing self-publishing, like they take care of. So that's why I've always been drawn to it.
No,
But
but that's see that knowing why you choose the path you choose, knowing yourself, being self-aware, because I don't think there's a wrong or right answer, right? I think that I
oh
know
yeah,
authors who have done both. I know
right,
authors who would only self-publish. I know authors who are like, absolutely not. I want to just traditionally publish. I think there's nothing. I think I love that there's options, and the option you choose should go with your vision, your definition of success, and also your strengths and your skill set. And like you said, like I don't want to self promote. I don't want to build this.
right,
And you're right. When you're self publishing, you have to build all of that. A lot of
yeah,
people think like, oh, you can either be traditionally published and have someone do everything for you, or you can self-publish and doing on your own. And it's like doing on your own does not mean one person. Doing on your own mean you hire the cover designer, you hire the editor, you hire the publicist. Oftentimes there's a misconception that self-publishing is like you're just one author sitting behind the computer wearing all the hats. And I'm sure that is the case for some self-published authors, but that is such an easy way to burn out.
Yeah, burnout. And also you have to have like the resources up front and like be willing to invest in all of those things with no guarantee that you're going to make enough back. It's a gamble in that way. Whereas with traditionally publishing, the publisher is making the gamble and like they're fronting all the money for that stuff. So yeah, but I mean, it is so interesting now because if you look at like the bestseller lists, like so many of the big authors right now started as self-published authors and just went viral on TikTok or whatever, you know, the gambling analogy, they drew amazing cards and, you know, now they're killing it. Like, you know, obviously Colleen Hoover, Lucy, like I mentioned, Frida
Mel
McFadden.
Robbins was self-published.
Yeah, like just so many success stories like that. So there's definitely no one way. There's no one path anymore, which is good. It's definitely leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. But
yeah, no, this is great. All right, well, I have a question for you, which is, what do you want to be true 12 months from now? 2026. What's happening in 2026?
Oh gosh,
if you had it your way.
So at this time next year, I will be about a month away from my next book being released. So let's see. I'm just going to put all the wildest fantasies out there and hope that they're going to manifest.
Yes. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
So a month away from publication. All right. So we're gonna have starred reviews in all the trade publications. So there's gonna be a lot of buzz going into this new book. I wish I could share the title, but I'm still not allowed to. But I know the title. But so yeah, there's gonna be a lot of starred reviews. Pre-orders are gonna be way up. It's gonna be positioned for more success than any of the other books I've had. And then the book that's on submission now is also going to be coming out a few months after the spring release. I'll put that out there. We'll say the next one will come out in the fall. This is me manifesting. So anyone listening, don't expect another book to be out next fall. But if all of this
That's what we're manifesting. That's what we're manifesting. I love it. Like okay, well, now I'm very curious what the next book is called. But I will wait patiently. In the meantime, I will pick up Burn It All Down and The Gay Best Friend because I'm hooked.
If you enjoyed the pop culture in Nearly Wed, the other two have even more of it. So your millennial heart will be
satisfied.
Yeah.
Actually, I have one last question. Before I have to run. I have one last question, which is, who, and I literally just thought of this, so I have no answer for myself, so we're going to think about it together. Who would play Kip and Ray in the movie?
Oh.
We have to think about that. It literally just popped in my head.
It's so funny because the other two books have been both, like the first one was literally cast, and then the second one was like cast in my head. I've never actually I've never casted Nearly Wed before. In my imagination,
that could have I don't know who it is, but I feel like it's ripe for like a perfect.
You know who I could
casting.
See? I would love to see in the role of Kip, like Jonathan Bailey, or like some very like heartthrobby kind of. I don't know if he's too young. I don't know. Is he 40?
I was gonna say he might be too young because then who like Ray would have to be so much younger, and I don't want to like rob the cradle,
right? But you know who was?
I have to.
Yeah.
Also, I have to think about this. This is me surprising myself with my own question here.
Oh, maybe like a comedian. an up and coming comedian could be
For Ray.
Yeah, for Ray. Like a Matt Rogers or something. Like if he were to start act, or he acts, I think.
Because I think Kip is like a much more serious person.
Kip would have to be maybe even like a Silver Fox kind of salt and pepper daddy type.
Okay, so this is what I'm manifesting. I'm manifesting this movie. I'm going to manifest the movie for Nearly Wed. If anyone out there wants to make that happen, that would be great because it's so good.
Yes.
And I was so entertained.
The rights are available.
The rights are available. You heard it here first. Nic, thank you so much. I'm going to keep up with what you're doing. I'm going to harass you endlessly to find out about the next book. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's so valuable for other up and coming authors or even authors who are going through the process right now to hear more stories about how different people got to publication. And I think you had great, mature insight into this process and what it takes. And it's not just always about the writing. People should not beat themselves up because it's not always about you're a good writer, you're a bad writer. There's so much timing. And like you said, perseverance that goes into it. So thank you so much.
This was such a pleasure, such a great way to start the day.
Yes, we're early risers.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. For more information on today's episode, please check out the show notes or go to writeronblockedpodcast.com. Before we wrap up, if today's episode sparked ideas for your author career, don't let them sit in your head. Take action. If you are ready for high-impact support, I offer one-on-one strategy sessions to help authors like you navigate your author business with precision. Head to reignitewithnicole.com to book a session or apply for any of my author programs. And if you found this episode valuable, please share it with a fellow writer and leave a review. Thanks for listening to Writer Unblocked, and I will see you next time.